There it is, never mind. Yeah, it's your boy PSA Sitch here with another Sunday show. But everyone's favorite is definitely not filling out 20 mail-in ballots under various names of illegal immigrants and dead people. Adam Friended.
Only 20? I thought it was up to 2,500 ballots being filled out. Yes.
Listen.
Sitch, get up on the news.
I was lowballing you, okay?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a case that was like for 2,500 ballots, I believe. Ooh. There's all sorts of shenanigans going on. So not sure if we're referencing that, but let's get into this Ben Shapiro video.
That's right. Today we're going to be watching Ben Shapiro. This was heavily requested, pleaded, begged for us to cover this. Ben Shapiro on Jubilee, 1 Republican, 25 Kamala Harris voters. I'm sure someone has already drawn a picture of Ben on like the couch, you know, with the people.
Oh yeah.
So
man, I hate that meme.
You hate that meme, right? So, and I guess depending on how long it takes to get through this, maybe we'll also watch JD Vance had a very contentious interview with Jake Tapper on CNN, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Should be fun.
Harris's attempt to put.
Oh, by the way, if you don't know how this works, the way this works, if you've never seen one of these videos, is the one person in the middle will make a claim, and then everyone literally has to like run to the chair in the middle. Whoever gets there first gets to start the debate. Then all the people in the circle, if enough of them raise a flag, then it basically kicks out that person and someone else gets a chance.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like a little gamified.
Basically like Survivor. Yeah.
It's like musical chairs, only instead of music, you get to debate Ben Shapiro if you win. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by 25 Kamala Harris supporters. My first claim is Kamala Harris's attempt to put DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion at the center of her policies is destructive.
Bro. Like I have like a sword? Oh. What's that guy holding?
Where do I get one of
those? Wait a minute. Oh, it's the flag. I was like, why is the Asian guy have like a fuck? He's in like the anime pose. Do you see that? He's got the sword. Like he's ready to draw on Ben Shapiro.
Yeah,
like,
he's ready to rock and roll.
Okay,
I will behead the conservative right in front of you.
I give that guy points for that.
How's it going, dude?
Morning, Josh.
Where do I get one of those hats?
Oh, my boy made it for me.
Nice.
My gay lover made it for me.
Yeah, what was that? That's weird. All right.
My boy made it for me.
Just
to let you know, if you make me a hat like that, it's going straight in the garbage. Okay.
Wow. You're telling me I couldn't make you a bucket hat with a giraffe? Like, okay. You can see it looks like it's like dripping with glue or some other substance like on the top of the head there. And then I'm gonna put a bunch of like little plastic clips with fake flowers on it.
I'm telling you. Yeah, it's going straight in the garbage can.
You see how mean Adam is? Okay, I could put like an entire hour of hard work into making a beautiful hat for him, and he just throw it in the trash can.
You think that's an hour of work? It looks more like 5 minutes. Anyway,
that's at least 20 minutes of work. All right.
So yeah, you know, first of all, we're standing on stolen indigenous Tongva land, right? This is.
Are you moving anytime soon?
No, but the fact of the matter is I'm born and raised California. We're talking about diversity, equity, and vision. We should.
So why don't you?
We absolutely should.
You could do it today, right now.
Great. We should, but that's not my point here. The point is you're saying that diversity, equity, inclusion is destructive.
Yes.
Right. So when we look at this country that is built off the backs of slavery and white supremacy, taking the lead, building the roots and foundations of everything that you know and believe today, it's ironic to see a Black and Indian woman who's rising up to the occasion against society, pushing them down. And this isn't just the fact that they're Black and Indian and a woman, it's the fact that
Can you give me an example of how society pushed Kamala Harris down, please?
The demographic of people is what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, but you suggested that
Has this guy made a point? What is the point that what is he saying? Is he saying anything?
No. He's saying we're on stolen land. He's done a lot of virtue signaling. Like, I think that black lady who's nodding her head might have sex with him later tonight. So
wow. Only if he keeps the hat on, though.
Look, that is the purpose of all of this stuff right here. You know, he's saying the right things. Look, I'm on your team over here. Let's make babies.
It's all just high-level mating strategies.
It is. What else is going on?
Mm-hmm. You're
definitely not
correct.
argumentation here.
Do they say when the guy ran up, did it say what his name was?
I like how he says, I was born and raised in California.
But it's stolen land.
But wait a second. I was born and raised here, so I deserve to stay.
Right.
Like, then why are you bringing up the fact that you're on stolen land, dumbass?
So yeah, all he said was
stolen land.
This is all just the guilt, like to make you feel guilty. We're on stolen land. He said that you live in a white supremacist society that dictates everything that you think, and that Kamala is a minority.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's like a snake charmer. It's like, we got to get that guilt out of you. Let's get that guilt going. Let's get that guilt up. We got to get a lot of white guilt here. And then I'm going to throw something on you. I'm going to ask you for something. Can I borrow your Ferrari?
It is funny because you can see like even the people are like, they're getting tired of this.
Yeah, they're like, get to the meat of this.
Like, this is retarded. Yeah.
I liked it when you were talking about stolen land, but what is all this garbage?
Kamala Harris is being pushed down by society.
I'm not suggesting that. No.
I mean, that's
so. Okay, my point is saying that.
I'm sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Good to meet you.
I'm not saying Kamala Harris is oppressed. Okay. Like, he couldn't even make a representation argument. What a dumbass.
I know.
Whoa. Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice to meet you. So my opening question to you would be, why is that a destructive thing? Why is that a bad thing when for a long time in this country, I feel personally that white men have had an advantage over some communities that have been discriminated against. So why would you say that that is a destructive thing and not, maybe making up for lost time?
Sure. So let me explain what I mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the basic theory of diversity, equity, and inclusion is spelled out by people like Richard Delgado, who's sort of one of the founders of, for example, critical race theory, is that essentially disparities equal discrimination. That if you see any disparity between one group in the United States and another group in the United States, that is the result of some exterior discrimination. It is not the result of individuals within that group acting differently. It's not the result of cultural differences. It's not the result of aggregated differences within individuals within that group. And that to me is a failure of logic. It also is destructive in that it separates group from group, particularly in the United States, on the basis of race, which is not the best way of actually bringing Americans together or forming policy that is the best for all Americans.
Do you think there's room for nuance, perhaps, though? Like, yeah, maybe not everybody, but there certainly has been a large sect of people that has had it harder because of the color of their skin or their sexuality or their gender identity. Could you acknowledge that maybe there's, a middle ground there where it's not all, but there is some people who certainly have had a disadvantage?
I will say that history has consequences, obviously, and that if you are talking about historic marginalization of particular groups, that has consequences. The problem is that when you design policy in order to rectify for cosmic injustices or historic injustices, you actually have to try and measure out whether underperformance, say economically, is due to those historic injustices. If so, how much? What is the corrective policy that is actually aimed at achieving best opportunity for all? The diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that are directed at separating race from race and then benefiting one race, for example, at the expense of another, ignore the fact that there are individuals within those groups.
What do you got? You got to unmute yourself, man.
I'm not muted. I was just laughing. So if you're just listening, there's like this lady and she's just like making this really squinty face, like just staring at Ben in like utter confusion, which it's funny because everything he's saying is so reasonable. I mean, I'm not some big Ben Shapiro fan. We've criticized Ben a lot here, but like everything he's been saying so far has been just insanely reasonable. Yes, obviously there has been racism in the country, and yes, obviously that past has effects on the future, but none of that makes it correct to say that every single thing that anyone experiences who's not white is because of some sort of systemic injustice against them.
Right, which is the argument that the left generally makes. Like any disparity equals racism.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Systemic racism, though. They've taken their foot off the gas on the overt racism. They're like, yeah, maybe overt racism doesn't really exist anymore, but this systemic stuff, we've got to get to it.
Well, they have to, because the evidence of, or not the evidence, the instances of overt racism are far fewer in between. So you need to sort of lean on something else, obviously. Yeah. But, it's just funny because, like, it's very obvious, like, Ben, he talks about this, obviously, it's his job, but he's thought of how to phrase this in this setting. So he just kind of has, like, his points, just boom, 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 like, laying them all out. And I feel like a lot of these people, it's like when people come on, our stream and they're like, what do you mean by woke? And what is woke? And then we kind of, like, explain it, and they just kind of sit there, like, stunned for like a second because they don't expect an answer. It's like a legitimate answer. They just expect nothing. And I feel like that's like a lot of these people, they just like debate randos, and they're like, oh, I beat you with my talking points. And then Ben's like, no, here's my thought process. Bing, bong, boom, boom, boom.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a narrative that, conservatives don't really have a definition of woke, or, there's no real definition of woke. So they do fall into that narrative. So I'm sure many of the people have that same kind of narrative about Ben Shapiro here. He's just, fast talking liar. That's the narrative. So they don't really need to consider his logic, right? It's all just based in lies.
Right. Do I wonder from a strategy standpoint, is it better if you're the guy that runs up there, you should be talking as fast as possible. But if you're the person in the middle, shouldn't you be talking as slow as possible to drag out the time?
Maybe.
Listen, you got to game everything, all right?
That history does not fall on everybody equivalent. That, frankly, genetics and intelligence don't necessarily fall on an individual level, right? You and I, we don't look the same. We might have different heights. We might have different qualities. That is just the way that God or nature has bestowed skill sets on everybody. What exactly is the government supposed to correct for? And if you took this entire group and you separated it in half, just draw a line anywhere. It's a circle, right? Anywhere you draw a line, you're going to get disparities between the two groups on either side of the line, without regard to race, without regard to sex, and without regard to, for example, sexual orientation.
But does that mean that hasn't played an effect in that story at all?
I'm not going to. No, you'd be a fool to claim that, that again, past injustices have no effect on what's happened today. Thanks so much.
There's another problem with this format is you can't actually really get to probably anything deeply.
Nope. Yeah.
Because, everyone's fighting for their time. Everyone has like a talking point. So probably the best strategy, if you're one of the people in the group here, is to just come up and shout a talking point at Ben to like blow up your own TikTok or YouTube or whatever it is you're promoting. That's about it.
I think that's what a few people did. They should at least let whoever's talking finish their point before they. I mean, it's super bad content to just, okay, look, he was in the middle of, fuck it. I guess that point is over.
If they did that, there's always going to be someone who's going to like just keep talking for like another minute or so.
Right. Yeah. Well, they should let Ben finish his point then.
Right.
Watching guys gear up to run is really entertaining. That was so nice, everybody. Thank you.
So you believe that certain economic disparities between racial groups are caused as a result of cultural differences?
Sure.
And so what is the backing on this? What would you say contributes to your belief in that?
Okay, so not all cultures, for example, value studying in school the same. You can check this by the amount of hours that kids of particular culture study. So, for example,
that guy's going, oh man, he's doing a racism here.
I know. How dare you?
He's saying black people don't like to study. What a fucker.
He's saying it to a black person's face, Adam.
I know. Yeah.
This Jew.
I think that girl, she looks pretty conservative. She looks like she probably studies pretty hard. So.
Korean Americans study a lot more than, for example, Latino Americans in terms of the number of hours that kids study.
Genius. He's like, let's pit the Latinos against the Koreans. Let's just leave white people and Jewish people out of this, right?
Smart.
It would be hard to suggest what to attribute that to other than sort of parental guidance and what exactly the priorities are of the parents. This is true, by the way, between white people. Okay, so when I talk about disparities between groups, you can talk about white Appalachia, and there are very different values with regard to studying than there are for, say, upper-class white Americans who are living in Brooklyn, right? That's not the exact same thing. So cultural differences are not just racial differences. I think that anybody who attempts to sort of clumsily map that on and pretend that that's all the same, that's obviously not true. But cultural differences do explain an enormous amount of group disparities across incomes. To take a perfect example, if
I don't know why people on the left get so like triggered by this, because their argument would be, which is true, which is not untrue, but which is a true argument, is they would say, well, the reason that those cultural differences exist is because, in some part because of the history of racism and systemic oppression and, living in poverty, and you go through the whole list, and like that's why these cultural attitudes have evolved in the first place in various communities.
Right, and also, I mean, economic conditions play a role as well. If you're in an unstable household, maybe you're 15 and you've got to get a part-time job to help pay the rent for your mom.
Right.
I mean, you're obviously not going to have as much time to study, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
right. So I don't know
why they don't pivot to that kind of stuff.
Right, that would be the comment to pivot to. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I don't know why they don't just talk about that.
Yeah. Look, the stability of the household is the most important thing. Like Ben would then pivot to, well, this is a cultural thing with two-parent households. Obviously, if you have a two-parent household, you're going to be more financially stable, that kind of thing. So, but I do think, I mean, a lot of times, a lot of times conservatives are overly optimistic about the economic environment. I think one of the reasons why populism is on the rise on the right is because people on the right are waking up to the fact that the economic environment is kind of not that great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
If you look at single motherhood rates, they're not equivalent across groups. Those are going to have massive differences with regard to outcomes for children. So if you're talking about cultural differences, again, cultural is just it was a rough way of saying how people.
Oh, she's very upset about that. She's like, oh my God, he's doing a racism. He's talking about racism.
He is a racism.
You have to be able to use objective metrics to measure culture, and people don't want that.
It's weird because, like, essentially, so the right's argument is the reason that there are disparate outcomes between groups is because the groups are behaving differently. They're behaving differently because there's different cultures. And then sort of the far left position, or even just the left position, is no, they're acting the same, but the systemic racism that's holding them down. Like, is that the belief of these people in the circle?
Yeah. Well,
that's retarded if that's the case.
I would also say there's the cultural relativism thing where they're like, you can't really judge a culture. If a culture wants to be completely consumed by single mothers, then that's their right, and that we need to structure society to accommodate that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Parental support from the single parental support from the state or whatever.
Well,
we can't judge.
Obviously, the solution, since Ben has talked a lot about how single motherhood is a bad idea in terms of outcomes for children. Obviously, the solution is you need to have more easy access to abortions.
Sitch, how dare you?
Right, that's the solution to this.
How dare you?
I mean, how can he say otherwise, right?
Abstinence only program, Sitch.
Okay.
You know how it is.
I gotcha.
Keep your legs closed, and everything will work out fine. Boys, keep your pants up. Women. Keep your legs closed.
I was gonna say, why are you telling me to keep my legs closed? Don't tell me what to do.
Oh my God. I so want to make a joke, but it's too far. Just too far.
Let's see.
Act within a group on a large scale. And that is going to amount to some generalization, but that generalization is going to tend to, shall we say, concur. It's going to correlate very highly with outcome.
But culture is acclimated over time. It becomes a thing over time. And so do you not think that these historical disadvantages that certain ethnic groups have been through over time has created this culture in which they're unable to put themselves ahead? You do say that Asian Americans are more...
Okay, listen, I gotta give her credit. She said the thing. She said exactly the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
to study, yes, but we have to take into account that after the Chinese Exclusion Act, Asian Americans were given a certain type of reparations, which allowed them into the country. And in order for them...
Okay, she just ruined it by bringing up this Asian Exclusion Act for some reason.
What's the Chiron say?
It says, San fact check. Congress repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1943, establishing an immigration quota for China. Today, China remains the top country of origin for international students in the United States.
So that was a type of reparation she's referring to? Just letting
that
Chinese
doesn't
people in?
Well, that doesn't explain that's not explaining the reparations she's talking about. But.
Right.
They were given visas, which allowed them to come into the... Yes, they were given easier processes into visas, yes, which allowed them into... No, it's a form of reparations, which they were once excluded from coming in. And so giving them an easier opportunity to attain these visas allowed them into the U.S. And mainly the...
I mean, that is a form of reparations, is it not?
If they, well, it depends. If they said, okay, you can just suddenly apply for a visa like everyone else, then no. But if you say, I don't know the facts about this, if you were to say, okay, to make up for the China's Exclusion Act, we will thus grant you some specific amount of visas, then that would be a form of reparations.
Individuals who were able to attain those were people with higher educations, which is why it may seem that Asian Americans within the country who come in typically with higher incomes as well as higher educational backgrounds, it may come off as that they are more studious than Latino Americans. But what we have to take into account is that Latin America and Hispanic people have...
God, this argument it makes me want to stop taking racial statistics, like, period. The argument is basically, yeah, all of the unstudious Chinese people are staying in China, and we're bringing in all the studious Chinese people. So it's raising the Chinese population number of studious people. But really, if you just looked at the entire Chinese population worldwide, there'd be a bunch of lazy Chinese people, right?
Right.
Yeah. So why are we even keeping track of these statistics? Why are we keeping track of statistics by race? What's the fuck? What is the purpose of this? That's when it all ends, when we stop keeping these demographic statistics.
But is that is that the problem? Is that, like, a lot of times when you have immigration to a country, that immigrant group, because the type of personality it takes, or you have to have more money generally to immigrate to a country. I mean, obviously not talking about illegal immigration or asylum seeking, but, normal immigration process, you're going to have a more specific type of person, which is more likely going to lead to better socioeconomic outcomes. And that's going to kind of skew statistics in a specific way.
It could.
Faced a lot of tremendous setback due to historical atrocities. It's not their culture per se. What you see within...
Is there any individual agency in here, or is it all historic circumstance?
Everything is based off of history.
I mean, this argument is terrible because obviously Jewish people suffered the Holocaust and they are still very successful today. So I think that argument always blows this argument away.
Well, I don't know if that, like... I guess the argument would be, okay, well, like the Jews that came to America, obviously, I'm sure there are people that were definitely anti-Semitic. I know that I know that my parents, my grandparents faced anti-Semitism. I haven't really faced it except on the internet, but in real life, not to any extent that was like massively, but they did face it. And I don't know. That's like, obviously it's it's pretty different. They didn't have to, be segregated through Jim Crow laws or anything the way that, Black people's parents or grandparents did.
Acclimates, everything is an accumulation of history.
So to take the single motherhood example, for example,
the way...
that was fun anyway. Whoa.
This is so sad.
Hey, how's it going? How are you? Good to meet you.
Where's I'm really important? Oh, he's right back here. Look, you see him right behind Ben Shapiro. He's Ben Shapiro's second head over here.
Hey, did you know? So apparently Zero Fuck sent this to me because I think like Rob Noor was like watching this. He said I'm really important was in the Offspring video.
Yes,
really fly for a white guy.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I didn't know that.
I think we watched it on stream a long time ago, didn't we?
I forgot if that was the case.
Yeah.
That's pretty based.
We might not have watched it on stream, but I have seen it.
So your basis is saying that culturally, people don't have the same advantages, right?
What do you think of this look, Sitch?
Don't make any jokes. You're not allowed to make any jokes. Nobody's allowed to make any jokes. No jokes. Everyone, shh.
Why?
Adam.
I was going to say I liked it, but I guess I'm not allowed to.
No. Stop. Bad. You're all bad. You're all horrible people. Okay.
What?
Jeez.
What?
What is that? What is like the name for like the warning colorization? There's like a name for it. Like when an animal has like bright colors to detract.
Because it's like poisonous.
Yes, like to detract predation. There's a specific word for it. I always forget what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think that's what's going on here? I'm fucking poisonous. Stay
here
away.
It is. How do you say this? Aposematism?
Oh, that's what it's called? Wow.
Let me ask
Learning something new every day.
Let me let's see. Wait, here we go.
I mean, I do know about the brightly colored things are usually poisonous, so.
Aposematism.
Right.
Aposematism, that's how you say it. Yes, the aposematism.
It's like anti-Semitism, but for animals. But there are some animals, that mimic that are not really poisonous at all.
Yes, right. Of course.
So what's going on here? Is this poison?
Is this the coral snake or the king snake? That's right. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Who knows?
Yes. Yeah. I guess we'll find
Red on
out.
yellow, kill a fellow. Red on black, okay, Jack. All right.
I think it's wrong.
Well, there you go. It's the king snake.
I think it's wrong to. That's funny. I think it's wrong to, if your look is designed to grab attention, I think it's wrong to tell people that they can't discuss your look, right? I mean, the whole point of your look is to grab attention. So,
yeah, but shouldn't your look? Well, whatever. I always get turned off. I don't mean sexually. I just mean turned off, like psychologically, when you can like look at someone and you immediately go like, oh, you're trying to be a stereotype, like intentionally. Like I'm just like, why? What is the point of doing that?
Well, virtue signaling. That is the point.
I guess.
You're basically, it's the same, when they run out on the football team and they're all wearing the same jersey, so you can tell which team they're on.
Right.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah.
You're in like the middle of war, okay? You need, they need to see who's doing what.
This is not war here.
I mean, we all know who's on what side.
What are we talking about here?
What do you mean? We all know who it's in the title, okay? It's 1v25. We all know what's going on.
Right.
I'm saying that not every culture sort of
Ben is trying his hardest not to laugh right now.
I know. It's funny.
It's amazing.
Initiates the same action within groups.
So in part, you're saying that you're part of each culture. You know what goes on in each culture to say these things.
No, I'm saying that I can analyze the activities of a particular group with reference to their actual behavior.
So if you go into my culture,
this argument I hate, the argument that you have to be within a culture to understand it, because at the same time they'll say, oh, we need to hire authors from that culture so that they can describe the culture authentically. Well, when I read whatever product they produce, aren't I supposed to understand the culture? Isn't the whole purpose of that like advocating for that?
Yeah,
so
but you're
then
not
don't I therefore understand the culture?
Well,
from being outside the culture?
Well, okay. It's difficult because on one hand, it's obviously easier to understand something if you're within something, you're within a system. But on the other hand, if you're within a system, it's a lot easier for you to be biased because you're within the system. And it's kind of funny because like, this is the critique that the woke will make against, white people or any dominant group, is they say, because you participate in this white supremacy, this dominant culture, you're swimming in it, so you can't actually perceive it correctly. You can't actually see it.
Yeah, that goes against their argument, right?
Right. But then that's why they come up with the stupid argument about how, like, well, if the only people that can truly understand anything is if you're a minority in the dominant culture, because then you perceive the dominant culture by being in it, but then you also perceive your own minority culture. But then the counter example to that, or the counter argument to that is, well, no, because you're still experiencing everything differently because you're not part of the majority culture. So you have your own unique experience, which this is useful for information, but it doesn't mean that you 100% know everything. And there's also the point that there's a lot of fucking stupid people out there.
Like, yeah, they don't understand their own culture.
Right. Like let's just, are you going to believe, you know, are you going to just go pick on some random person in the middle of America to explain all the cultural values and understanding of American culture, or some, I don't know, some Japanese guy who studies American culture as like a job and American history as a job, you know, and has done his dissertation on it? Like, which one of those people is going to know more about the culture?
The guy who did his dissertation, obviously, because he's going to have many points of reference from within the culture. This is like complete hubris to think, I am this person, I magically understand the culture with which I am within. Like, no, you're one point in that entire culture, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I hate this argument.
Culture, we're told that we can achieve anything through hard work. We have to work 10 times harder. But you're not part of our culture, so you're explaining something that doesn't have to do with you. But in turn, you're saying that that culture, unfortunately, does not value the same thing that the next culture does.
So revealed preference tends to be a better...
Well, wait a minute. That's the problem. If you have a culture that tells you you have to work 10 times harder to achieve the same success as your neighbor because of your skin color, I mean, that's pretty demotivating, isn't it?
Yeah, you have a demotivating culture. Exactly. You have a culture that's going to make you sleep all day.
Right. Because you're gonna be like, I mean, I would be like, what the fuck? This is bullshit. Why am I even try? That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Better way of doing social science than subjective perception. So revealed preference is how people act in the world. So for example, if you have one group of people who say, we really, really value our kids studying, and then their kids don't study at all, that would be a revealed preference.
Okay.
Everybody has
so
has
then when you have people
who
say in corporate America, you have people who value nepotism versus actual studying hard. What is that called then?
Okay, so the idea that people generally value nepotism over studying hard, I'd like to see the evidence of that, given the fact the vast majority of wealth in this country is not created through nepotism or through inherited wealth.
But Donald Trump was given nepotism, was he not?
I mean, he's one example among a bajillion people who are very, very wealthy in this country. I'm very wealthy now. I certainly wasn't born very wealthy.
But then you can't speak on Donald Trump's experience, can you not?
That happens to be the case. Okay, I mean, you can laugh at my particular history, but I grew up in an 1,100 square foot home in Burbank, California, with 4 siblings in 1 bedroom.
And
oof! Oh my God! Please make it stop.
What?
4 siblings in 1 room, Sitch?
That's pretty bad. Yeah.
That's a nightmare. Oh my God! Kids are brutal. Sitch, I'm sure you had your own room your entire life, right?
I think at like 4. I think until like 3 or 4, I slept in the same room with my brother, and then
okay, so you shared a room. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but we had space to do so. I think it was just an age thing. But.
Right.
In Burbank. Hold on. In Burbank, I'm sorry, but in Burbank versus growing up in South Central, being told that you have to excel 10 times harder than the next person, but then you're not part of the culture, to say that you can actually come to these disparities is kind of far-sighted.
The idea that you have to work 10 times harder coming from South Central based on, for example, test scores is obviously not true. We've had affirmative action programs in this country for solidly 40 years.
But now affirmative action is gone. It's out the door.
Okay, here's the problem, and this is the wicked problem of all of this, is that if you are in, you know, South Central or something, it's not a question. It's not, you have to work 10 times harder because society is out to get you. It's you might have to work 10 times harder because you exist in an environment where there's a lot more shitty things happening to you and around you that makes it more difficult for you to want to maybe go on the normal pathway to success, where someone who grows up in another area of the country, you know, they're going to have their entire environment is sort of propelling them or pushing them in one direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather live with 3 siblings in 1 room in a safe environment than obviously someplace where there's gang shootings going on every night, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, is what makes it harder is like you're just living in an environment where the culture is not propelling you towards success. That's what makes it 10 times harder. It's not like people don't live in a society still where the police are like, just scooping up random black people off the street or whatever to throw them in jail. Like kind of like the way they're sort of framing the issue.
Yeah.
Now DEI is present. DEI is actually saying that we need to have diversity, equity, inclusion. So you're actually putting a footing in the door for different races, different genders, different women, different men, everything. So now you're saying that because this program is gone, this one isn't.
Sorry, you've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Oh.
Yeah, like a jackrabbit. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Hi,
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
That was a real gendered exchange. So you see that 3 guys got up and then the lady just sauntered over and they're like, okay, boys, we got to sit down.
Yep. They should just pushed her down.
Right.
Grab the chair away.
Too. So,
Oh, God, that fucking piercing on the bridge of the nose. Oh, God, that's terrifying. Ah! It scares me.
I want to shift the conversation about DEI a little bit away from culture because I don't know if that's necessarily like a helpful conversation to have. And I really want to talk more about representation. So 1 in 5 Americans currently is Hispanic. This country, like it or not, is not a homogenous country. We are a very diverse country. Mm-hmm. Do you not think that our legislators should be representative of the overall population?
I don't see a way that you can have a quote unquote representative legislature with 435 members of Congress in a country of 340 million people, because you can divvy that up however you want. It's not by race. You could do it by sex. You could do it by gender. You could do it by sexual orientation. How exactly do you decide what is quote unquote the representative group? And also, I don't believe
we need to do it by height. Okay. All the short kings, they need their representation in Congress. There's too many tall fucks in Congress, right? Was it the tallest candidate almost always wins? This is bullshit, Adam. All right.
Yeah, look, they are overrepresented.
What the fuck?
Look, most of the legislation stuff is considered a sales job anyway, and height does help in sales. It's a fact. So
terrible.
Individuals ought to be represented based on group identity. So, for example, I'm Jewish. Jews are actually overrepresented in Congress. I don't think that we ought to decide exactly how many people in Congress are Jewish based on the Jewish population of the country. I think that's actually a pretty silly way to do representation.
Well, we don't have to do it systematically, but fundamentally there is an issue with the fact that we are not fully represented. Like the entire population is not represented. We have never had a black female president. I still have to pay taxes.
We've never had a
the
Jewish
whole concept is no taxation without. Well, we have had a white male president. We've had like 45 of them.
Whether Jews count as white or not has been sort of an object of debate.
Well, before they get off on the Jews or Schrodinger's white people, I guess the question to ask here is why is representation a more valued attribute, biological representation, a more valued attribute than merits?
I just think in the population, they're leaning on their fairness intuition. They think their group has somehow been closed out. So
well, that's the problem.
Perceive it as unfair.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the perception is that unless the person matches your group orientation, they're going to try to screw you over, I guess, or something. Like they're not going to necessarily do the correct things in terms of legislation. When, I mean, obviously, personally, I would rather have someone who's a good representation, who understands the issues and can get things done for, my district or my state. I don't really care if they're, a white Jewish streamer with a funny voice on the internet or not. That's sort of secondary.
That's different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about as a member of a certain community. A lot of people are very collectivist in their thinking. Like they think of themselves as, I'm a white guy, I'm a Latino guy, I'm a black woman, whatever it is, right? And they perceive that if no one in their category has achieved the highest office in the land, then society is somehow structurally against that happening. And they extrapolate that on things that happen to them. Is basically, it's a point in the narrative that society is structured against the kinds of things that they want to achieve. So they perceive society is unfair towards their demographic because someone hasn't achieved the highest office. The merit thing, I completely agree with, but I mean, this is just from their perspective, what they're feeling. Right. Yes.
Yeah. I understand.
Like as soon as look at, did this really happen with Barack Obama? Because that's kind of the argument people made. You know, a lot of people thought Barack Obama becoming president would help race relations because it would put that kind of feeling that a black man could never be president aside, right?
Right.
Did it?
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Right. I don't think it did.
Right.
For quite a while. We do. Okay.
You do.
So, I mean, it depends according to whom, and that's a pretty recent development. Okay, so
basically everyone. It's a religion.
Judaism.
Do you not agree that you were a white man?
I mean, I think that it depends on the context in which you're discussing it.
So what are you, Ben? Are you not a white guy?
I mean, I'm a man of Jewish ethnicity, which is sometimes grouped with white and sometimes not. I mean, that's the more accurate way to put it. But when
what
we're
else
talking
would you be
about
grouped
with Jews, who are which is an ethnicity. I mean,
so you're not white at all.
I mean, again, it depends who's doing the grouping and how. I've seen Jews grouped with white and Jews grouped with not white. Are we just pretending that doesn't exist? That's a reality. However, as far as your generalized point, which is that we are supposed to identify people by group identity, if we don't have a black female president.
Why don't they ever say just Europe? Why don't they say European? Because that's what they mean by white, right? Ben is probably of European descent. I don't know particularly what European descent he is, but obviously.
Right.
Yeah. It is interesting that Judaism as an ethnicity has the same kind of characteristic as America, in that there's a lot of different ethnicities.
Somehow, black females have not been represented. So Barack Obama was in no way representative of black females because he's not a female.
No, he was. He was representative.
So
but
he was
that's
half
the point.
representative. How do you do the math on this, and why?
You shouldn't do the math on it completely statistically, but the fact
you shouldn't do the math on it at all. You should treat people as individuals. You should treat people as individuals.
Well, if you don't even want Kamala Harris to attempt to create DEI initiatives in office, then there isn't even going to be a conversation about it.
I mean, I don't think there ought to be a conversation about why we ought to be represented by race or by sex. I think that we are each individual people with individual ideas, and if that person represents my ideas, I don't care what sex, race, or sexual orientation they are.
How do you deal with that intuition that people have that the society is unfair if they haven't seen someone that looks like them become president? Because that is like an issue, right?
It is. I mean, the only way to get around it is you have to destroy identity politics and make it just so like gross that nobody wants to really engage in identity politics.
Right.
That's right. That's the only way to deal with it. Yeah. There's no other way, because you're right. That intuition is always going to exist otherwise.
I'm repulsed when she's like, "You're a white dude." Like, what the fuck? When it's for me, that's just to label somebody like that is just repulsive to me. I just think as people should be people, and especially in the age of authenticity, right? Where you're creating your own identity. Like, if the trans woman, I don't even know if the person's non-binary or trans or what, like if she goes up to the red hair guy and labels him, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's considered offensive. You have to ask her pronouns, whatever it is, right?
Right.
But yet you come over here and you're like, oh, I'm just going to label you.
Yeah.
I thought we were past this. I thought this was a problem.
Well, look at all the white people that hate Donald Trump. I mean, they don't feel any sort of, if Donald Trump wins the election, they're not going to feel like, oh, I'm represented because Donald Trump shares, the skin color that I share.
Oh, of course not. Yeah. Kooks.
I mean, to an extent, yes.
No, entirely.
But there is an issue with the lack of empathy in office. We need to be able to empathize and legislate for the people that are living in this country. Do you not believe that?
I was not aware that empathy is relegated to particular race solidarity.
No, but I mean, it's easier to be empathetic towards people whose experiences you can fundamentally understand based on your identity. Like, do you not believe that people have an inherent bias?
So first of all, I'm not sure. I mean, we can start with the empathy itself.
Now she's literally making the argument for racism.
Yeah. Well, she's saying you can only empathize with people if you share an experience or a biological racial trait with them, I guess.
Which is bullshit. So much of our media is designed so that you can empathize with people who don't look like you.
Right.
That's why America rules.
Yes.
Culturally.
Yep.
I'm not sure that empathy is always the best basis for actual public policy, because when you have group solidarity and empathy based on group solidarity, you're going to attempt to actually benefit the group with whom you have solidarity. So that actually cuts against generalized public policy.
But that's like a fundamental thing that just exists, which is why we need representation in government. Okay, cute. Thank you.
Oh my God, she just totally throws them all under the bus. Okay,
I know,
you
she mad.
fuckers. How dare you? All these white men with their flags up. You think that lady's racist, Sitch?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the problem why I hate this ideology. Is definitely racist. It makes you have to be racist.
No, you don't. You don't have to be racist.
No. If you adhere to the ideology that she's taught, that sort of the woke ideology, it's racist by nature.
It is, yeah.
Wow, he got it this time. All right, nice. Good to see you. How are you doing?
Doing all right. How are you, Ben?
You know, it's been a day.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like an interesting setting being surrounded by 20 people that disagree with you.
I mean, the truth is I grew up in LA and then I went to law school in Cambridge, so I'm a little used to it. It's not, yeah, I've been here before.
This guy was one of the standout people, and I wanted your perspective when I was watching this on the argument he makes here. So
okay. Yeah. On this argument in this first section?
Yeah, because it's kind of a strange argument.
Anyways, let's talk about DEI. Do you think that Trump should have won 2016? I'll wrap it in. It's conceptually relevant. I'll demonstrate the relevance.
Okay, sounds good. By what measure? Do I think he did win, or do I think he should have won?
Do you think he should have won?
I mean, yes, I'm happy that he won. If the question is, am I happy that he won? I'm happy that he won.
Okay. Well, I'd say that Trump won 2016 because...
By the way, I did not vote for either candidate in 2016. That's a decision made in retrospect.
Awesome. So I think that Trump won 2016 because of a modality of DEI. Essentially, what I'd say is the Electoral College, right, strives for inclusion of smaller states with lower populations by overrepresenting them in the overall vote. Like, you could correct me if I'm wrong, or the SAN fact checkers can. I'm pretty sure that over the last 25 to 30 years, Republicans have won the presidency given the Electoral College, not given the overall popular vote. So if you're against DEI, if you don't want inclusion on the basis of race, inclusion on the basis of gender, or even what you're saying earlier, we could even say inclusion on the basis of class, why do you want inclusion on the basis of population, rural areas, states,
We should actually use a better example. Why don't you just ask if I believe in the U.S. Senate? Right,
the U.S. Senate, this would also apply to the U.S. Senate.
Right, okay, so let's use the U.S. Senate, because the U.S. Senate is actually even more unrepresentative of the general population than the Electoral College, which is at least a rough approximation.
It'd just be funnier to hear you say that you shouldn't have voted for Trump in 2016, but we could talk about the Senate
that's a different subject, but yeah. I'm very happy that he won, even though I didn't vote for him. I mean, we can talk about Trump later. Yeah. We've already done a bit. Well, I'm sure we'll do more. As far as the idea that every elected body has to be elected based on population as opposed to based on the area of geographic distribution or the states that actually pre-existed the federal government. Okay, the way that the Constitution of the United States was created was as a contract between sovereign states, which is one of the reasons why, for example, you have a United States Senate as opposed to just a House of Representatives. So is that a form of DEI? That seems like a stretch to me. What? The kind of DEI that I'm talking about specifically would be separating human beings based on inherent characteristics, like, for example, race, as opposed to suggesting that the United States Senate, which is obviously unrepresentative of the general population in many ways,
seemingly my point is
somehow bad. That's a check and balance, right?
Well, seemingly my point is that this is another modality of DEI. I've like no problem with you explaining to me, right, why the Senate or the Electoral College would be given the U.S. Constitution and like some contractual agreement that they had between the sovereign states. That's fine. But what I'd say is that your claim here would just imply that the Constitution upholds DEI within our electoral processes.
If your claim is
so, do you think that the Constitution upholds DEI in the sense of including smaller states with less representative populations?
That is a true stretch of the meaning of DEI, but I get your point. I mean, if the idea is that the only thing that is not pure DEI in a democratic context would be sort of popularly represented votes, then I think you can make the case that basically you should get rid of every representative institution. We should go to a pure democracy because...
Well, I'm not making a case for what we should replace it with. I'm making the case that it would uphold DEI. We could talk about, right, what other systems should function in the case of the Electoral College or in the case of the Senate, but that's a completely different conversation than are these systems upholding DEI.
So again, I think that you're definitionally stretching DEI. If DEI is the basic idea that all disparities equal discrimination and must be rectified by government interventionism, which is sort of the definition, then stretching that to mean the Electoral College seems like you're going pretty far afield field to defend a very broad concept as specifically badly applied.
Wait, 1 second. I don't think that we need to say that DEI is equivalent to disparities equal discrimination. We could just see that DEI is like a qualm for disparities in general, right? And what we apply here in this certain modality when we're talking about the Electoral College, when we're talking about the Senate, is we're trying to qualm the disparities of the lack of population in rural areas. We're trying to qualm the disparities of smaller states compared to larger states. And seemingly, you haven't really given me a response to this apart from calling it a stretch, but I do appreciate you for
No, I mean, it seems to me like the argument that you're making is that in order for there to be calm and sort of conciliation inside the United States, particular racial groups have to be given particular benefits. Okay, well, because that was the argument with regard to the states in the United States, right? When the Constitution was formed, the way that you came to an actual agreement in the Constitutional Convention is states were not going to sign on unless they got particular guarantees of the interests of those particular states, right? So if you're claiming that that's DEI, then the response that I would have is right, because that's how you have to come to an agreement. So if you're going to make the parallel argument with regard to DEI in, for example, the racial context, you